Hi, I'm Corey. Welcome to Creating with Scraps. This is going to be the part B where I make the rest of the pieces that were requested from the video where I shared the items that I had made during the summer, during my retreats and such. I had intended to do it in one video. It was getting way too long, so I decided to go with Plan B and do a Part A and Part B. All right, the next item, so this is just a continuation. The next item was at 2032, and I happened to use a piece of dried flower on this one. Simple little fold down pocket that can be glued into the book, and it's on tracing paper. So I am going to show you how to do this, but I also wanted to give you the option. You can absolutely put dried flower, dried weeds, what have you, inside there, but you don't have to. You can also get the same effect using stickers or die cuts. In this particular case, I grabbed a sticker, so I'm going to use a sticker. But it's the same idea, same exact idea. You just lay it down and glue it down. All right, in order to make these, you need a piece of transparency, some kind of a flower, whether it's a die cut or a sticker or a real dried flower, a scrap of pattern paper, and a tracing label. And I'm going to use a bit of the faux vintage cellophane tape. Okay. Step one is to take your scrap, your offcut of coffee dyed tracing paper. Personal preference only. When I make these, I sew down the top and the bottom ledge. And the reason I do that is because it's tracing paper and it's thin. So if I create a fold, it's just a little bit stronger. Okay, so it's a lot stronger. So I'm going to take one of the edges and just fold it down. I don't know, maybe that's 1/4 of an inch-ish. I didn't check it as far as scoring it, though you could score it if you wanted to. So I just folded it down, and I'm going to sew. Let's see if I can move this back into frame. I probably took it out of frame in the last one. I apologize. I had dropped the foot, and it was having issues. So I'm going to sew this edge down. I don't know if you can see it or not. I should check that, but I don't want to take up too much space in the total workability. You know what? I'm going to zoom out just a bit. Maybe that's what I need to do. Okay, I sewed just the top edge down because it, again, makes it a lot stronger. And then I fold that up, and I ink now, if you're an inker, simply because it's easier to ink the inside edges before you sew or glue them into place. All right, I'm going to fold it up, and it doesn't matter how much. I mean, just however deep you want your pocket to be. I'll do this one kind of, I mean, you know what, maybe I have a lot of paper here, so I'll do a tall pocket. There we go, there's space for it. Line that up and put it into place. Now, when I make these, I generally tend to not fold it all the way down so it's the top of the pocket. I leave a bit of space here so that the tag can be a little bit taller. And I'm going to do the same thing on this one. I'm just going to leave a little bit of space. And I'll fold this down. Let's see, I've got a piece already cut. Yep, that'll work, that'll fit. So I'll fold that down, and then I'll do the same thing with this edge. I will fold that edge under so that when I sew, it's just a little bit sturdier. And you don't have to do that if you were using cardstock instead of tracing paper, which you absolutely can do, or a digital or something. That step is unnecessary. And you know what? I don't like how high that is, so I'll just refold it. This is going to be the back. It's not going to show. I will refold it. So the crease that I made it previously is not going to show because it's on the back side, and I'll tuck this in. And it's tracing paper, so even if it showed, it wouldn't be a big deal. There, I like the balance of that better. And I'm not going to sew this now because when I sew my transparency on top, I will get a seam. So I don't need to sew that twice. And did I even do it straight? That's possible that I didn't. You can see here I didn't do it straight. So I'm going to adjust this just a little bit. Again, doesn't have to be perfect, but I like it to be close. Just, there we go. Refold that. That's better. Much better. All right, I'm going to glue Let's see, is there direction on this? I'm going to glue my scrap of card. Maybe I'll glue my scrap of card. And for those who ask, this is just a piece of Velcro square I put on the side of the bottle because I am notorious for losing the pin. You know what? That's too long. Okay. Plan B. I'm going to tear that down a bit and re-ink that edge. And again, I didn't pre-fit anything. I just grabbed scraps and thought, well, we'll create as we go. All right. So I've got that background piece in, right? Now I'm going to use this flower sticker. And because the flower sticker is a little bit long, I'm going to trim the bottom off. Does that fit? Yep, that works pretty good. So flower sticker. This one used a dried flower. You could use a die cut. You can use anything you want to put underneath there or on there. And I'm going to press that down. And here is my Tracy label. I've already inked it, but I can't, those are little letters. Not sure which is upside down. Well, if I can't tell, maybe you can't either. Okay, it looks like it goes this way. It's just a faded mini Tracy label. And in order to print the labels this size, on my printer, these are rather random labels from Tracy Fox. And on my printer, it says full size, partial size, and you can change the size. And I go to the photo setting, and I print it at 5x7. And that gives me the smaller labels that I want when I'm working with this smaller size. All right, that's just cut a little bit of that faux cellophane tape. Put a little bit of glue on there to make sure it sticks. And then I am going to put, actually, I've got a little bit of a white. I'll put that there. It wasn't straight. So I'll put a little bit there, and I want a little bit more down here to anchor that in place. I just cut off a little tiny bit, tear it randomly. And I don't care too terribly much if, oh, there we go, I like that. And then I've got a piece of window film, window transparency. Essential for the dried flowers, certainly not essential for this, but it's the look that I was going for on here. And again, I am going to ink this edge first because once I put that window transparency on, I won't be able to ink it. Window film, transparency, what else did I've heard it called a bunch of different things. Packaging, plastic packaging. Some plastic packaging works really great, some does not. It just depends on how thick it is. Right, ink on the edges. I feel like if I'm going to make it, I might as well be able to use it. And then I'll lay this over the top. And I want this top inked as well. Because again, once that transparency is down, I won't be able to put the ink on. Okay, and I'll sew this bit on top. And I'll move the speed up on my machine just a little bit for that, simply because nobody wants to listen to me sew forever. Okay. And let me line that up. Just making sure that my window transparency is lined up at the top of my paper, where my fold is, because it's a lot easier to trim with that piece in place. I trim around the edges and sides, not at the top. Okay, and then I'm just sewing the transparency all the way around. Again, you can glue it. Though the glue, it's harder not to let the glue show with transparency, but it is possible, and you can tape it. All right. All right. Put that in and around. Now I will cut off the remaining bits of transparency so you can see it overlaps. Well, maybe you can see it overlaps at the end. And I save those for smaller projects. And that's one of the reasons I do it this way, so that I waste as little as possible. I shouldn't say waste, this isn't a waste, but I don't need it all, so there's no reason to not reuse it. All right, I trimmed that down. Now I'm going to sew around this piece. Oh, and I trimmed a little bit of that off too. Well, that was good. Let's go with this. A little bit of wiggle room. There we go. Okay, that should work. And now I'll sew. I've already sewn this, but I'm going to sew around here so that the pocket's closed. And that's just the back stitch button so that I lock my stitch into place. I didn't technically have to sew along the bottom because it's folded over, but for the sake of ease and speed, I often will just sew along the bottom. And locked into place. I think you can see it from there. I hope so. So if you're a person who wants to see how I do it, you can. Trim and done. All right, so here you go. There's with an actual dried flower and there's with a sticker flower, but the same thing. Just a little pocket. Then when I glue this in my book, I would probably glue along the top and the bottom and make this a side belly band, but I could also just glue on 3 sides and make it an extra pocket behind the pocket. So there's that one. Okay, this one was the request at 1940, and this one's, maybe it was super duper duper simple. This is simply a journaling card, and I'm not going to show how to make this because it's just a journaling card. This particular one is a piece of digital, an image, and a sticker or a label on the top, and I just sewed it in place to give it some interest. Backed it with card. That's all that is. And I created a background tuck for it, and that's, I believe, what somebody wanted to see. Super great way to use up scraps. All right, can be any size. This particular scrap is what I've got, so I'm going to use this. Trim it down. So this one will be a little bit shorter, but again, absolutely doesn't matter. I'll put this up under here. And then this, I think actually this was, if I remember correctly, this was a thin digital. I had a square left, and then I just folded it in half to make it a little bit thicker, and square, folded it into a triangle. I shouldn't say folded in half, folded it in a triangle, and then sewed it into place. But for this case, I've got this offcut of whatever this is, digital. It's a digital with some bead tickets on it. And I am going to trim this down, trim that down, though I don't know that that's necessary. Just trim this. And then I'm going to cut it at an angle to make this triangle pocket. Now you can make, I don't know if I'm in frame there, you can make it as deep or as shallow as you want. Like this one was a square folded in half, right? So I would almost essentially want to do the same thing. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But those are wider and longer. Though it certainly doesn't have to be. But for the size of this card, you can start with any square, fold it in half, and you'll get the same exact effect. But for this, for the sake of this, I need to see, first of all, how wide it is. Okay, I'm going to trim down a little bit more here. And I want to start, see, I want it to start to go from corner to corner. So let's do this. I just took the card base that I'm going to be using and marked the back of the scrap that I'm using so that I know they're the same dimension. And I want the top of that off because there's a little bit of white, and now I'm just going to cut at an angle. This particular one is angled to with the tuck up on the top left. I could do the same thing on the top right, but I'm trying to do the exact same thing, well, close to the exact same thing, showing still how it can be altered. So I'll orient it the same way, but just know that you could also orient your triangle that way. And then I'm going to cut from corner to corner because this is cardstock and not paper. If it were thinner paper, I would just fold my square in half. All right, so I've made a corner. Just used a scrap, made a corner. That was actually a leftover digital that I'd had from a project I did a couple years ago. And every once in a while I'll dig those out and try to use them up. Again, it's a lot easier to ink this before you sew it into place. And same thing is true of the card. And then this I can ink up later. Don't much care. And then I'll tuck this onto here. But now there's a bit of lace up on the top just for a little bit of added interest. So I will put a little bit of lace there. And I'm just going to put a tiny bit of glue on this just to hold it, tack it down while I sew. You could clip it into place, but I'm just going to put a little bit of glue to hold it in place. All right. No, see, my bad. Okay, don't do what I did. Because I sewed this lace on, I need to sew this seam first. So I'm going to sew that seam. If you're not sewing, it wouldn't make any difference at all. But because I am sewing and I want to put a little bit of lace on there, so I've got this little bit of scrap of lace. I don't need quite that much, and I maybe don't need it quite that wide. And I kind of like it. So I'm going to sew this on first. I'll put a little bit of glue here to kind of hold it in place. And I'll try to do the same thing where I'm not just gluing it straight down, I'm kind of rumpling it a little bit. I like the rumpled look. So, but it's not really a pleat, it's not really a fold, it's just kind of a rumple. And then there may be a name in that for sewing, but I'm not a seamstress, so I don't know what it is. And this is old lace, and I just tore it, but that's okay. It actually adds, I think, to the interest. And I'll just do it like that. All right, and I'm going to just sew a straight line on this to hold it in place and to edge my paper. Okay, got it sewn into place. The lace isn't going anywhere. Let's see, just like that. Now, I'll glue this. Now I'll glue it down. Glued into place, and now I will stitch along here and along here. I say here and here, along the left side and then the top. And that is now sewn, and then I can put whatever journaling card I want. I could also put a little notebook in there if I wanted to put a little notebook or a little fold over piece or whatever. You can tuck anything that you want in there, and that's essentially how you make that. So same thing, just a journaling card, and that is how you make those corner tucks. Okay. All right. Trying to get all of the bits out of here. And this one, the next question I got, and I don't know, see there it is, there's that, was this tag. And I'm going to use a piece of wallpaper that I've got for this, simply because I've had it for a while. Somebody gifted it to me, and it's absolutely beautiful with a little bit of gold. I don't know how well you can see that gold metallic piece inside, but it's so pretty. Or maybe it's wrapping paper. I don't know, maybe it's wrapping paper. But the question was, how do I make this particular tag that was at $16.50? And I do this a lot of times with offcuts of card, because card makes great tags. But super duper simple. I'm going to trim it down. This, let's see, this tag is about 3 inches wide, so I'll trim this to 3 inches. Probably should have had that done, but I just wanted to show you that it truly is a scrap project. I'm going to save that bit. About 3 inches. Oh. 3 inches is a fairly standard size for, and I'm just trimming this. 3 inches is a fairly standard size for tag. And of course, but that's okay. See how you can see here, whatever that says, there's whatever the information is on there. I don't know if you can see it. But if I had been planning better, I wouldn't have left it there. But at the same time, it doesn't really matter because these pieces are going to go on top and it's not going to show. And this tag is a bit too long. But you know what I am going to do? Rather than cutting this off, I am just going to fold it. And I'll show you why in a bit. This is thin paper, so the extra stability with the paper will be totally, totally good. And that way I can put just a piece of coffee dyed paper on the back to make it into a journaling tag pocket. So I'm just going to fold that down. Height, it's still a little bit tall, but it's not super tall. I guess I can do the same thing and fold up the bottom. Could have folded up more on the top or fold up the bottom. Either way, really and truly does not matter. So I'm going to use this as the base for my tag. And now I need another 3-inch piece. So I want it to be the same width as my tag. Save those. And I'm making 2 diagonals. They don't have to be the same. They don't have to be perfect. Actually, on this particular one, I just took a square because I had a square and I cut it in half at a diagonal right down the middle. But honestly, it doesn't matter. So let's see, I'm going to make this one about 4 inches and then I'm going to cut it at a diagonal. I don't know if you can see that. I'm just taking a corner off. Taking a corner off. And I took the wrong corner off. Nice job, Core. Nice job. I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing because this is directional paper. And if I put it like this, it'll be upside down. But you know what? I don't mind it being upside down. So I'm going to do it. Don't mind it in the least. For the next one, I'm going to make it the same way. And I'm going to take off the top right. So I took off, if you're using one-sided paper, you need to angle cut left on one and angle cut right on the other so that your pattern is on the top. Does that make sense? So you're angling one left, one right, basically, is what you're doing, like them so. Okay. And then the triangles, I can put those aside and use them for something else. Again, because this is thin paper, you can see here, I sewed this edge and this edge. And this was card, so all I did was just sew on the edge. But I could fold this down and sew it to make it a little sturdier. For the sake of speed and ease, I'm not going to. My 2 angles, I am going to sew straight down the 2 angles so that the edge is finished. And I don't need to finish stitch them simply because they're going to be sewn down again, so that raw edge or the unfinished the unbackstitched edge will be included in my round stitch, so it won't fray. Sorry, thinking and sewing at the same time. I'm not a natural seamstress by any means, so I have to think when I'm doing this. All right, so I stitch down the edge. I don't even know if you can see that because of the color and you probably can't. That's okay. But just know that they're stitched. Oh, you can see it on the back. And again, I am definitely going to ink my edges. This particular tag has the taller pocket in the back and back left, shorter pocket front right. Doesn't matter in the least. You can angle them differently if you choose to, as long as you've got an angle one each direction. Okay. So I'm going to do that, and then now you notice that I didn't put it all the way to the bottom, and that's absolutely okay because it's not going to show. So if you've got a little bit shorter piece, doesn't matter. I am just gluing this down a little bit so that it stays in place while I sew it. That's it. I'm just putting a light amount of glue, and I'm going to put it close to the top, but not all the way up to the top because I'm going to take off those corners to make it a tag. So putting it in there and ink. Oh gosh, so much to say. School is good. Today is what we call data day at school, so we don't have students, but we have endless meetings with scintillating information about results and such. I know it's essential, but it's probably my least favorite day of the year because I'm not a huge fan of technology. I mean, I don't dislike technology, I just don't love it in teaching all the time. feel like many of our kids get plenty of tech time without me adding to it. All right, and then I glued that on top. So again, here's my stitched edge, and I glued it on top so I can sew it into place. And I am going to use my corner punch, but again, use what you've got. You can just chop it straight off. I like ease and speed. There we go. And now I'm going to sew all the way around the tag, and I apologize, I probably should have had more prepped, but my goal was just to show you how to do these things, and so you can see the process. I'm going to sew all the way around it. I just like sewing on it because it gives it a finished look. Like I said, I'm not a tech person, I'm not a seamstress, but I truly believe anybody that wants to can sew. The nice thing is I got my machine on Amazon for the sake of speed and ease when my last machine stopped working. It didn't stop working, but it got broken. But you can find sewing machines. I see them at yard sales quite frequently. Secondhand stores, OfferUp, Craigslist Marketplace, what have you. You know, people get them for whatever reason and don't use them, or they upgrade a model, and you can find them very inexpensively. You don't need, unless you want a fancy machine, you absolutely don't need a fancy machine for this. In fact, when I'm sewing, I know when I'm using these for journals, I know a lot of people do fancy stitches. I 99.99% of the time use a zigzag or a straight stitch. So as long as your machine does what you need, you don't need much else. A straight stitch will work. Even in the places where I use zigzag, a straight stitch will work. So again, just you don't have to spend a lot of money on it. I really wanted one with the thumb pedal when I replaced it. My old one, my previous one that my mom had given me had a foot pedal, and when a foot pedal and a thumb pedal, and then when the foot pedal cord broke, I just started using the thumb pedal, and I got addicted to it. And then when I got injured, it was a game changer for me to be able to use it. You don't need to see me ink. What the heckity heck? All right, so there's the tag. And then this, I put an eyelet in the top. So this is just a circle punch, and it's that same metallic-y antique gold. And all I did to get that is, this one's old silver, but it's the same idea. It's like the Rub and Buff, or I think it's a Rub and Buff brand. Yeah, Rub and Buff antique gold. So all I did was take some of the antique gold and rub it across a piece of craft cardstock, and it doesn't take long to dry. And glue this in place, and that gave me that same finish. And I use my board a lot to get things centered because I'm not great at centering. Push that down and mark about the center, and I'll put the eyelet in, and I can ink that later, certainly. Make my hole, and this is another good tool for the new folks. It's We Are Memory Keepers, what is it called? Hole punch? Crocodile, I think is what it's called. So there you go, I put the eyelet in, squish it down, and that is that. And I can use string, lace, whatever I want for the top. And that is that. And this is, there's a pocket here for a journaling card and a pocket here for a journaling card, and it's a tag. Then when I'm ready to be done, I am just going to put a piece of card on the back, coffee dyed card on the back, or because I left it like this, I could tuck, maybe I will, I could tuck a little tag underneath. So there is that one. Okay, moving on. It always takes me longer than I think it should. Oh, okay. This one, this mini tag envelope, I shared this making it with my friend Lisa. Actually, you know what? Hang on 2 seconds for that. I'll come back to that. This one that wasn't so much the card. This was for my words of the year. She wanted to know about the die cut. So this is a piece of book page. That's a piece of scrap of coffee dyed tracing paper, and that is a digital scrap. So it's just 3 scraps laid on top of a piece of card. And then I use letter stickers, little letter stickers to do determined. And then I put one of the Libra Designs by Susan die cuts on top. And I think that's what she wanted to know. And these are just these are the ones I grabbed with me and took this summer, of the Libra Designs by Susan flower die cuts. They're really pretty printed dies. So she prints the image on them and then cuts them, I believe, with her laser machine or her Cricut or something. And then I use embossing powder and embossing ink and embossing powder to get that kind of a shimmer on the top. And I think that's what she was wanting. Just, again, lots of different flowers, lots of different things available. Libra Designs by Susan. If I can think about it and remember it, I will put that in the information box below. Then it's just a bunch of die cut tags up into the corner. But I don't think it was the tag she wanted to see. I think it was the die. So there's that one. And then I've got that out of the way. All right, this one. This is one of the things I shared my friend and I made. It's just a tag folded over into a pocket. It's super, super simple, but it's really, really easy and kind of a cute alternative. On this particular one, I was using some of the thin Tim Holtz tissue paper that you can purchase. Right, here's the smaller one, and he's got a bunch, just a bunch. And you can use any tissue type paper, but it's thin. And so I had laid it on top of cardstock. I had some of this left over and I wanted to use it. Laid it on top of cardstock, glued it into place, and then used that to make my tag. So there is the background bits. Any card will work. It doesn't have to be the tissue paper at all. That's just what I had done, so I wanted to show you that. And you can see here, I've glued it on. I just used glue stick, glued it on. This one was a piece of printed cardstock that I didn't really love the pattern. So I laid this on top of it and I'm like, yeah, okay, I like the pattern. You can see the words kind of underneath and it layers on top and it still looks pretty good. And then here's the same thing with a piece of solid cardstock. So it's just a matter of what look you like. I've got two pieces on this one scrap of tracing paper. So I'll cut those. I'm not going to make both of them here. You don't want to need to see both. But so here you go. I'll make this into a tag, and I will trim it down simply because it needs to be trimmed down. Get rid of those raw edges. So I'm doing that. Well, here, this is the Tim Holtz Tonic Studios as a most recent trimmer. Some people love it. I love it. Some people hate it. Key with using this, I'll move this to the side just a bit. Key. It is designed to cut thick stacks of paper. So when you use it, you have to push down on this little bar, and you can tighten the bar too if you need to, but you have to push down on the little bar, and you have to push down on, let's see if it shows, this roller that does the cut. You have to push down on that, and then I get good cuts. But if I don't do those two steps, then I may not always get a smooth or even cut. So that's kind of incumbent upon me. Push down, and then even though this is thin, I get a good cut. And trim all the sides. So let's see, this is roughly 3 inches. But again, it doesn't matter at all what side you're working with. All right, so I've got my fleshed edges, and I guess I'm working with the one that's on the darker card, which is totally okay too. All right, and then I'm going to make this into a tag. Now, I know that not everybody cares. Like this one's sideways, so it works out great, but I don't like this piece, the top piece, when I'm making these upside down. Sideways, totally okay with it. Upside down, I don't like it as much. Personal preference. If you don't mind it upside down, that's great. So I'm going to want this piece because it'll be sideways on the top. So I'm going to take off the corners here. And I use that simply because it's easy. You can use, whatever method that you like to use to cut the corners on your tags. And because that one will be down at the bottom, I'm going to ink it. And then I just fold up my tag. It's very similar to the transparency one we just did. And I am going to sew this edge right here because that's my inside edge. And I won't be able to sew it if I don't sew it now. And I don't need to backstitch on that because it's going to be sewn down again. Sometimes it's just habit to backstitch. So it's not always necessary. All right, sewn edge. a little bit of ink. I don't remember if I put that on there or not, but it's dark, so it's hard to tell. And like so. Then the top, I am going to fold down. And is it straight? Yeah, it's straight. And then I sew it. It's really that simple. Now, here I've got the badge punch to put the ribbon through to tie it closed that way. So I'm going to do the same type of thing, but rather than just a plain, this was just a scrap of card put in place, and then I punched it with the badge punch. I had the whale tail that was already inked, so I thought I'll just use a whale tail. And you can use anything. You can use a circle. Like I could have put this circle on here and folded it down like this, right? It doesn't, here, I'll even show you what I mean. It doesn't matter at all what you put there. You just want something to increase the stability and increase the contrast. So I could glue this and then use a badge punch if I wanted to. Anything you've got. My point being that you don't have to have something special. You don't have to have the whale punch, or you don't have to have, and you can use a circle if you don't have a badge punch. I'm just going to use this and make sure it's somewhat centered. Just to show a little bit different look. Same exact idea, but a little bit different finish. Okay, now I am going to sew, I'm going to sew around here, and then I'm going to sew the top. That's just personal preference. I like the way the top stitch looks a little better. So I'm going to sew around the edges right here. And my crease is my start and my stop point, where I've got that fold. That's my start and my stop point. And I will go, I'll even go across the whale tail because that's the look I'm going for here. Okay, so I sewed around the entire top piece. So, whoops. So it looks like this, right? Okay, so sewed around the top piece. And now I'm going to sew around the bottom piece. Some people do it in the same step. I like to do it in 2 steps. That way I'm sure everything is lined up, and maybe if I were a better sewer, it wouldn't be a big deal to me. But I just want to make sure it's lined up. Again, I don't have to sew across the bottom. And you know what, in fact, on that one I didn't sew. On this one I'm not going to. I'll start and stop. I didn't sew across the bottom there, so I'm not going to sew across the bottom here. But you can. If you don't want to start and stop, you can just sew across the bottom. This works absolutely every bit as good with glue. It just gives you a little bit different effect at the end result. You know, the non-glue versus, or the non-sewn versus sewn. So if you don't have a sewing machine or it's not your preference, just glue. With card, you do want a little bit thicker glue. Like school glue isn't, I don't think, quite strong enough as a general rule. So you'd want a little bit stronger glue, like a reptile glue or art glitter glue or barely there glue. And that's it. And in this particular case, I'm going to use a circle rather than a badge punch because you've seen me use the badge punch. So I'm going to punch a hole right here, and I have some of the larger eyelet, at least I think I do. Oh, we'll find out if I'm wrong. Some of the larger, here we go, a larger eyelet. I thought I had one over there. And I have to change the, on these crocodiles, or the punch setter, a crocodile punch setter, what have you, there's holes, so you can punch holes, and there is an eyelet setter piece, and there's 2 different tips, or 2 different sizes on it, and this is the little bit larger one. And now I know I'm supposed to switch this around too, but I generally don't because I'm lazy like that. And then put it in. I don't know if you can see there. Squeeze it and I let set. And then I can put a bit of lace or trim or ribbon. In this case, all I did on this one is I glued a piece of ribbon in place so that it would tie. That's it. You can use lace, you can use anything you want to make it tie around. And you don't, gluing lace is not necessary, or gluing ribbon is not necessary. And that is that same exact thing, just a little bit different height and just a different top bit. So there you go. There's that one. Okay, last one. All right, last one. This, people asked for there's two of the same thing. And the way you can make it is identical. I'm going to put these little bits off to the side. And, no sewing machine on this one. Okay, sewing machine. I am moving. Okay, no sewing machine on that one. These are the hidden journaling spaces, whatever it is. And you can make them with an envelope or just a piece of coffee dyed paper. So there was one at 2705 and one in 2717, but you do them essentially the same way. So I thought I would show you. It's just a hidden journaling spot. All right. You can use an envelope, an already done envelope, and glue a piece of paper to the top. And let's do that. Actually, no, because you know what it's like to glue and you make them the same way. So you can use this with an already made envelope. And in this particular case, I would glue the envelope closed because you want the envelope closed, right? Glue the envelope closed and then just put the paper on top. But I'm going to show you how you can do it with just a piece of tracing paper or coffee dyed digital paper or cardstock or whatever you have so that you can see the same thing. I'm going to make an envelope. And again, I could score this or just fold it. I'm going to make an envelope, a super, super, super simple envelope in this particular case. And hope it's mostly straight. I'm not super great at folding straight, but that's okay. All right. And then I'm going to fold this over to about here. So it's similar to what we did before. And it's mostly straight. If you're worried about it being perfectly straight, absolutely get your scoreboard out and score. So I folded this over to make a makeshift envelope. All right, like this. And now I'm going to cut the extra bits off. And I just need to leave, and it doesn't matter if I do it on the right or on the left, I just need to leave a folded piece at the top and a folded piece at the bottom. And on this particular one, it truly doesn't matter if it's on the right or the left. I'm going to trim this a little bit of at an angle so that it doesn't catch when I fold, and that's not a very good angle, but let's, okay. And same thing here, I'm going to cut this off and cut this off. A little bit of an angle, and there, just like that. Okay, and now I'm going to do the same thing right here. I'm going to cut the folded flap off. And again, this works really well with a Fiskars trimmer to make sure it's straight, or longer scissors. I don't know why longer scissors often make it easier to cut straight, but for me they do. And here. And I think one of the reasons I like these particular projects is they're leftover bits or scrap bits, and it's a good way to use them up, and it's just relaxing, I guess is a good way to put it. It's just, I don't want to say mindless because that's not accurate, but it's just a really easy way to unwind for me. All right, and then I'm going to fold this piece down and I'm going to glue these pieces to this. So this is what it looks like when it's cut, right? And it's obviously, you can see, not even close to being perfect. It doesn't need to be, it doesn't matter. I'm going to angle that just a bit. Simple, simple, simple envelope. You can see these aren't perfectly straight either, but they're not going to show, so I don't care. I'm going to fold in those flaps that I created and put a bit of glue just on the flaps. glue stick will work for this, I believe, too. And then fold it down. So I've folded over paper, made an envelope. Obviously, I wouldn't close it like this if it was just a regular envelope. And this one's extra wide. This one's extra, doesn't matter in the least. Make it to whatever dimensions you've got with the paper, scrap paper you've got. But basically, I made an envelope. All right. Now, on this one, let's see. This one is about 1.5 inches at the top. If you can see there, I cut off about 1.5 inches. And this is non-directional paper, so I can choose which is the top or bottom. I can make this wide if I want to make it like a wide pocket. I can make it tall. Completely your choice. But I'm going to cut about same amount, about 1.5 inches off, just because it gives me some stability and sturdiness. And there you go. I just cut the top of the envelope off. Then I measure the width. This looks like it's just under what? Just under 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just under 5 inches. And then I've got a scrap of card. And then I want to cut it to fit in here just about the same. Okay, I want it to fit the width to fit inside of this envelope piece that I created. So that's about 5 inches in this particular case. This trimmer doesn't, there it's a little long. This trimmer doesn't have a 5-inch mark, so I made one. And I wanted it just shy of 5, so I'm going to put it just shy of that. And I tuck this piece, and I didn't make it quite small enough. It's got to fit in snug, but it's got to fit in. Ooh, sorry about that. That was a nasty screech. Rubber feet running across the desk, I guess. Okay, that's better. And then I just tuck my card into the top of the envelope that I cut off. Now, you want it to look like it's hidden journaling, but I still need a little definition to show that it's 2 separate pieces. So I normally ink a lot, but I'll give this a super light inking. See what I mean about it? If not being perfectly straight in the back, you truly, truly can't tell. I suppose if it was a solid color paper, you could see it a little bit more, but with this digital, no, not even a little bit. And then I'm going to glue this into place. And you don't need a lot of glue, but I just put a little bit underneath the edge. Make sure it's in there straight, or mostly straight, and that it's all the way in. You know, tap it on the side, straight and in, and push down. Same thing on the back. Just a little bit of glue underneath that edge. And that's it. Then you tuck it in to your bottom piece. Now, obviously, I didn't trim it, but all I have to do is trim it to the right width. And the way I do, or the length. And the way I do that is I match these 2 pieces up. Make a mark. And cut. And I usually cut just because of the length. I cut just a little bit below my mark. I'm sorry, a little bit above my mark. And then I would ink the edge, but you don't need to see me ink. And then, where's the top? Here we go. I'll ink this edge too, because again, I want to have just a little bit of definition of where it opens and closes. And hidden journaling. I could have made it a little thicker. I find on a notepad it's hard because of getting it in and out. And it's nice and snug because I haven't played with it at all. And there you go. Oh, you can see I didn't make it perfect, so I would have to trim a tiny, tiny bit more off the bottom, but not a lot. And then this one I didn't put anything on the top, and this one I put an eyelet, and you've seen me put eyelets in, so personal preference. So I would trim a smidge more off, and then then I can glue this down either as a belly band or just as a total pocket, and then I can take my journaling card in and out like this. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching. Next up, okay, next up, I make lists. I have lots of lists, and I try to stick to them, and then squirrel happens, and that's just kind of the way I work. But Tracy Fox has a new floral kit. Tracy Fox from Love Junk Journals, Tracy Fox Creative, has a new mini floral tags and pockets. when I saw it, I immediately thought, oh, that's perfect for a gratitude journal. Now, a lot of times I'll use a fall theme for a gratitude journal, but I absolutely fell in love with these florals and the versatility of them, and I knew that they would go beautifully with an older set of hers. She has 2 archive sets, 1 and 2. I think the main difference is set 1 is less grunge, a little bit lighter, and I chose set 2 because I like a good bit of grunge. So I printed archive set 2 and the mini tags and florals, and then a bit of random labels, and I printed them, and I've folded them and inked them and got them ready for a gratitude journal. And then I'm going to make various bits with these different flower pieces. There's a ton of different styles and sizes and types in there. And so I've got those all prepped and ready to go. Some photo corners, page corners. I make these with my students for bookmarks, and I thought, oh, well, we could do one of those here. And then, so we'll make these, and we'll decorate these, and we'll put them together. If you choose to join me and come along. I'm going to do hopefully 2 gratitude journals, one super quick, super easy to make in an hour or 2, and then one that's just a little bit more time consuming, so that when November comes, I can journal each day something I'm grateful for. And I have a series of prompts, and I will type those prompts up, and you can take a screenshot, or I'll send you a PDF or what have you of the prompts that I'll be using for that. So that is prepped and ready to go, and hopefully this weekend will allow me time to do that. So that is next up, is Advent calendar. That's my next step. And then December daily. Tracy also every year does a December daily, which I absolutely love doing. And I had a couple ideas for Advent calendars and gift Advent calendars using that. So after the gratitude journal, that'll be next. And then I believe what I'll do is in January, I'll start the little bits of lace. I have had that on my burner for a long time, just different ways to use little bits and scraps of lace, kind of what was seen in these last 2 videos. I like using old lace, and I like it being able to live on, even though it may have torn or is old and worn out. So that will hopefully take place maybe in January is my goal, like a New Year's mini series. And I won't do a whole bunch at once. I'll try to do smaller, shorter videos for that. And then interspersed in there, I will show you the mini journal options. I'll show you exactly how I made it so that you can use whatever bits and pieces you wanted. Somebody asked about single-sided 12 by 12, and there's lots of videos out about that, and I've done a few, but I'll make sure I show a few more options as well. All right, if you made it this long, thank you very much for watching. I hope that answered all of your questions, and I hope you're enjoying the beautiful fall and time creating. Take care.